What's going on, guys? Thanks for coming back on the channel. So yes, this isn't my Del Sol, it's not the S2000, and it certainly isn't my Frontier. This is a new to me 2018 Honda Civic Type R. If you've been following the channel long enough, you'll know that I used to own an exact copy of this car, except in championship white. Funny story is that when I originally bought my white one, I went to the dealership and they had two. They had a red and a white one. Both were 2018s. Both had approximately 5,000 kilometers on them, and both of them were about the same price. I initially was interested in purchasing the red one. Believe it or not, I love Champ White, but I was actually more drawn to the red car. The reason I didn't buy the red Type R was because the sales manager really wanted to move the white one, and he gave me a better deal. So bottom line is I actually saved $1,000 getting my Champ White one. But here we have my 2018 Honda Civic Type R in, I can't remember, it's not Milano red. In red. Anyways, here we are. This car is absolutely fantastic. So just quick preview on the vehicle. I purchased this vehicle from a Nissan dealer, and part of that was because I was trading in my Frontier Pro X4, and the Nissan dealer was actually able to give me the best value on my Frontier. I had looked at a couple of other Type Rs, and truthfully, most of them kind of looked like they had been lived in hard and not necessarily abused, but not particularly, clean or well kept per se. However, this one, on the other hand, was an exception. It's very obvious who owned this car before me really did take care of the car and was pretty meticulous with it. There are a couple of things, a couple of blemishes. Naturally, this is a used vehicle, so there are going to be little things, like, for instance, got a couple of little nicks in the paint there, a couple of stone chips in the front. Nothing crazy. And of course, on my way home, I got a little dinger and a stone chip on the hood. It's kind of to be expected. However, where the vehicle really shines, I mean, again, the exterior is in pretty mint shape. And one thing I love is that it has no tint. I don't know why. I am not a tint guy. I never have been. So I just love that there's no tint. The dealer was also on top of things. They replaced the brakes. Even though it's only got 48,000 kilometers, the brakes were replaced. You've got new pads, rotors. They did a full servicing on them. As you can see, we've got new rotors in the front here. You probably can't tell, but there are new pads. And yeah, we've got some brand new Michelin Pilot Sport 4s on the front, and not really sure what's on the rear. Let's have a look inside. Pay no attention to my hitch bolt there. That's from the truck. I got to take it to storage, but as you can see, or can't see because the lighting is not all that great, the interior is in pretty clean shape. One thing that really gets me about any pre-owned vehicle is interior. I hate scratches. I really dislike interiors that look like the car had been kind of lived in hard, or just general carelessness. The rear seats don't even look like anybody ever occupied them. There's no obvious signs of scratches or egress scratches at all. And even the backrests of the seats, no signs of any scratches whatsoever. So I'd be really, really remiss to find out if there was anybody who actually sat back here. Apparently older, mature gentleman just found that the vehicle was becoming too small and traded it in on an SUV. Every body panel is original, clean Carfax, so the vehicle's never been in any accidents. And I've gone over it, checked over everything, and it's in pretty good shape. I am still having a difficult time to try to find any flaw. One of the really cool things about this car is that it was actually purchased, originally purchased at the dealership, the Honda dealer that I used to work at. As many of you maybe know, I used to work at Brantford Honda. This vehicle was bought and purchased through them it was, rust proofing was added to it, like the factory, not factory rust proofing, but dealer done rust proofing. And they used a really good product out of there. It's almost like a honey seal product. It was like a waxy kind of, apply once type of product. And this vehicle has been not driven much, because according to my math, it's only really been driven about 9,000 kilometers a year. So I don't think it's really been subjected to any winter driving, and if that, probably very little winter driving. The last 2 years with COVID, a lot of people weren't really going into work, so they weren't driving into their houses anyway. So the car in itself is like in incredible shape. A lot of these that I went to go look at that kind of had been used as a daily vehicle had some pretty obvious signs that they were being used in the winter. It's just a quick shot of interior, driver's side. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely not one of those situations. You can usually tell, like, when you open the hood, and some of the factory hardware just rusts almost immediately, but in this case there is none. All the bolts, all the hardware that's kind of like at the leading edge, that usually gets exposed to a lot of the road salt and moisture, definitely in really good shape. So yeah, all things considered, pretty pleased with it. Drives amazing. And that being said, we'll go take it for a drive. But in the meantime, as we pull out of the parking garage, a couple of gripes that I've got with the car. So the first is, and I want to preface this by saying that I realized I purchased a used car. No used car is going to be perfect, and I understand that. I get that. And I wanted to get as clean as an example as I could probably find within a reasonable distance for a reasonable amount of money. And I really do think I achieved that with this. There's so many pluses about this that the little things that I have found, which are more dealer related than anything, are hardly worth, being upset about or griping over, because at the end of the day, like, the vehicle as a whole is really an amazing deal. Especially in this inflated market that we're seeing, with the Type R's and stuff like that. I have to admit, I did get this. It was a little disheartening to pay more for this than what I traded my other Type R in for. But in fairness, what I received for that Type R, which again, when I traded it in, it was a 2018. It had similar kilometers on what this has at 48,000 kilometers. And what I paid for this is essentially what I traded in my old Type R for. So I kind of just gave myself that, the same deal back, I guess. But anyway, yeah, a couple of things that I'm a little disappointed about, and again, more related to the dealer, not necessarily the car. Overall cleanliness of the vehicle was okay. I know I said earlier that I don't want a car that had been lived in hard, and this one was definitely not. However, there's always the center cup holder and console. People buy coffees, and on occasion, especially here in Canada, if you go to a Tim Hortons, you can almost guarantee that coffee mug or whatever is going to spill. And of course, when it does, it goes right down the center, into the center pocket area here. And so just in the crevices and stuff like that, like, it looks like there was like accumulation of spilled drink that had just not been cleaned very thoroughly, especially by the detail department. All in all, everything was spot cleaned properly or surface cleaned, but it just wasn't thoroughly cleaned. And I was a little disappointed at that, just because you just expect more, right? The other thing that I noticed too was there were a couple of little dings on the roof, and that's kind of frustrating. Not huge dings by any means. I mean, I didn't even notice them when I first went to go look at the car, so obviously they weren't really that big that really drew my attention to them. However, in my experience, again, at dealerships, and having had purchased other vehicles, many vehicles in the past from a dealer, they generally have a contract with a PDR guy, the paintless dent removal, who comes around usually weekly and goes through the inventory and pulls out little dings and dents out of the used inventory or the pre-owned inventory. Now, if it's a wholesale piece, they're probably not going to put in that effort. But on a vehicle like this that's not really old, that they are selling at somewhat of a premium, you would think that they would probably address it. And I was a little disappointed that that wasn't addressed. So I do have a couple of dings on the roof that, again, not overly huge, but large enough that, you know, they're a bit of an eyesore. I want to kind of take care of. Outside of that, you know, that on that note, they did do a good job at properly reconditioning the car mechanically. Obviously, they have to do a full inspection on the vehicle and do a safety. Here in Canada, we do something that's called the safety certificate, the safety standards. So, you know, we obviously check, you know, a number of things in the car to see if everything is okay. And everything kind of met the criteria with the exception of the brakes. Now, when I initially test drove the car, I found no issues with the brakes whatsoever, aside from the fact that the rotors were visibly scored. And I know with these Type Rs, having had one in the past, it's not uncommon for the rotors to have a little bit of scoring on them after some use. However, I guess it didn't really meet the minimum thickness or requirement. So the technician called it and said, you know, it needs pads and rotors. So brand new pads and rotors all around. However, in doing that, and I am very familiar with this with my previous Type R, is that because these things naturally sit low, in a dealership setting, when they are lowering it on the hoists, if you don't put blocks underneath or whatever, sometimes removing or swinging the hoist arms out from beneath the car can be a little bit tricky, and there's very little clearance. And if you flip the pad up, especially, you're definitely going to have some difficulty removing that swing arm without it making contact to the lower side skirt. And in this case, it looks like my right, after driving the car home, I don't know if you can hear it. If I increase my speed, you might hear it. It's right there. You can hear an audible fluttering. And that's coming from the side skirt clip, like missing. And I'm assuming when they did the safety and they did, you know, the brakes and they had it up on the hoist, clearly, because I never noticed that on my test drive. Clearly, they probably made contact with the skirt and it got knocked or pulled out or whatever the case may be. But I did check, and I noticed that the clip was absent. It's not there. All the other clips are intact with the exception of this front one right here. So that's an easy one. I'm actually headed to the dealer right now to just go pick up a clip and a touch-up pen, because you should just always have a touch-up pen. So overall, I am really, really pleased with the car. I kind of knew what to expect getting another Type R, obviously, having one in the past, the exact same year. You know, it's a pretty fair assumption that not much is going to change between the two cars aside from the color. It is exactly what I remember it to be. It is a well-engineered, well-thought-out vehicle that does many things very well. And that was the point of me purchasing this car. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to creating some more content with my new-to-me Civic Type R. This thing is just, I just love it. I honestly do. Any gripe I had about my old one, I was probably too stupid to realize how great of a car it was in general. I'm not going to lie. There are issues with these cars, and we'll get into them and how I'm going to address them. But all in all, this is a phenomenal car. You know, you just can't go wrong with it. Anyways, there you have it.